If you're aware of what's going on in the world today, you're probably aware that EV waiting lists and new cars in general are the longest they've ever been. So if you're after a new electric car and you want to find out what's the shortest waiting list, or you're after a particular car and want to know if the manufacturer is telling you an accurate time of delivery, then stick around for today's video where we're looking at the longest and shortest EV waiting times and some tips that might help you skip the queue. Now this list has been compiled using 4 sets of data points at the time of making this video. Some of it is from leasing companies and some of it is from supplying dealers, so the dealers that you'd go in and order the car off and the time that they are expecting to get delivery from the manufacturer to their doors. This list has a lot of manufacturers, but some of the data for some manufacturers was missing and it may appear in the future. So what I've done is in the description down below, I've put a link to a spreadsheet where this data is. And if you follow Maz Shah, Epic Winning Maz, on Twitter, he will try and publish an updated list of this every 4 weeks to give people a kind of balance of where it is. So if you don't already follow Epic Winning Maz on Twitter, then I suggest that you do that now. The cars we're looking at today are going to follow a large range of manufacturers and models. But before we get into the list, why don't we discuss why waiting lists are so long? Now we currently have 3 issues at play on why delivery times for cars are so long. Now the first issue affects all cars, and that is the semiconductor shortage. Now if you want to know more about the semiconductor shortage, there's a video top right on my channel where I did a whole sort of video about why semiconductors are so important to cars and why there's a shortage. Now number 2 is to do with the war in Ukraine. Now Ukraine has a big supply of what we call wiring harnesses. Now wiring harnesses are essentially the main spine of a car. They're the brains of the car where all the electrical connections run down, all the communications run down, and Ukraine had one of the biggest factories that made the wiring harnesses for other manufacturers. So obviously because of the war in Ukraine, none of them are getting out, and it is making a real big supply shortage of other companies that do make them, but not in the same numbers that this Ukraine factory did. Now the third reason is solely down to electric cars. This only affects electric cars, and in some respects some other cars, but mainly electric cars, and that's the effect of raw materials. There's a bit of a shortage on pretty much all raw materials, but in particular, one raw material that's very important to electric cars, and that is a shortage of lithium. And it's pretty much because mining companies haven't really been mining or exploring lithium as much as they have other raw materials, and the current boom of electric cars all over the world means that there is so many manufacturers fighting over a very, very limited mined resource. There's plenty of lithium out there, but we're just not mining it in the quantities that we're needing at the moment. So let's look at the waiting list. At the moment, we've got the longest car at 65 weeks for a Porsche Taycan. Then we have the Mini Electric at 60 weeks. Now, you might think over a year for a car is insane. However, we've got the VW ID4 and the ID3 both taking 52 weeks each for delivery, and that's followed by a lot of the VAG family, including Skoda and Audi. Now as we go through the list, most of the cars are over 26 weeks with an average waiting time of 28 weeks. Now the interesting bit of data in this list is that the Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6 have pretty much identical waiting times, which you'd expect seeing Hyundai own Kia and they are essentially the same company with different shells. And you can also see that the VAG group, that's Volkswagen, Porsche, VW, they all have similar waiting lists as well. It's almost like they're all fighting for the same part pool and they're dispersing them between themselves in a fair manner, which is good to see. The fastest lead time we actually saw was Tesla with around 16 weeks delivery. However, the French with the Renault Zoe have a lead time of 14 weeks. Now that could be to do with the fact that the Zoe is not as popular anymore due to something that happened. Now I just said Hyundai and Kia have similar waiting times, and I also said that Volkswagen and the rest of their VAG group have a similar waiting times within their groups. But Mercedes is a bit of an odd one. Now the Mercedes have some really random waiting times. Now for the EQ range, we saw random times from as high as 40 weeks for the EQS and EQA with 36 weeks, but the EQB is only 16 weeks and the EQC could be with you in 10 weeks. Now there's a couple of tips to shorten waiting times. Now my first tip is to make sure you join a Facebook group that is for the car that you're thinking of buying. Now there may be several in your country, make sure you join them all. There may be some that are specifically for dealers to post in, and if you can, keep an eye out on those groups, because occasionally you'll see a couple of things happen. You'll see dealers saying that they've had cancelled orders, you'll see customers that have bought the car, maybe don't like it and want to sell it, or you may occasionally see people who bought a car and realise they can make a very quick profit selling it. And if you are desperate for that car and you want it early and you can't wait the amount of time, then maybe the option of paying a little bit more to have it early is an option for you. I think it's lunacy, but if you want to do that, that is completely up to you. And cancellations do come up more often than you think. Number two is the piece of advice that me and Maz have also looked at, and that is if you can call around as many dealers as you can. Some of these dealers may not use Facebook or sort of be very good at social media, but if you call around and say, have you got any cancelled orders for this vehicle? Have you got any of these cars coming in? Have you got any of these cars unassigned that I can take on lease? You may find that some dealers may have extra stock that hasn't been advertised or allocated to any customers, or customers cancelled and they can reallocate it to you. So give the whole dealer network a ring if you're desperate to get that car early. This is one way of skipping the queue very quickly. Now this video isn't perfect. It's not meant as a guarantee of how many weeks your car's going to take. Lead times can increase and decrease without notice. I'm more wanting to make the video because many people were thinking that dealers or car companies were pulling their wool over their eyes when they were extending lead times when cars were arriving. At the end of the day, if your car manufacturer, your car dealer tells you that your car is going to be delayed by a couple of months and you think you're going to skip the waiting line by moving to another manufacturer, the point is that everyone's being affected by these lead times. I'll try and get the list updated as soon as we can. Maz is going to be tweeting and updating it as soon as he can on Twitter, so keep an eye on that. Just wanted everyone to know that you're not alone if you've been given a really high waiting list. And if you're ordering for yourself or a company car, I wanted to give an idea of what cars you can get quicker and the soonest if you're really, really desperate to get an EV as soon as possible. Thank you very, very much for watching this week's video, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.